You are not unlucky. You are not cursed. But somewhere along the way you started believing that chaos has your home address, that drama recognizes your face, and that no matter how carefully you choose people, they eventually turn into sources of pain. Here is the truth Carl Jung spent his life uncovering. The chaos you keep fighting out there is not an external attack. It is an internal broadcast, a high-definition projection of a part of you that you have refused to meet. If this makes you uncomfortable, good. Stay with me, because the next 30 minutes will show you how to stop being the screen and start being the one who changes the film. My name is Shehzad Hussain, and this is Jung's roadmap to mastering your internal mirror. Before we go further, I want you to imagine a house with no mirrors inside. You walk through it every day, but you never see your own face. Instead, you catch reflections in windows, in the surface of a spoon, in a puddle after rain. Those reflections are distorted, stretched, upside down, darkened. You might start believing you actually look like that. This is the psychological condition most of us live in. The outer world becomes our only mirror, and because it is bent by our unprocessed inner material, we mistake the distortion for reality. Jung called this phenomenon projection, and once you understand it, your life cannot remain the same. Now, projection is not a flaw that only a few troubled people have. It is a universal human mechanism. Every single person projects. The difference is whether you are aware of it, or whether it runs your life from the shadows. If you have ever met someone you instantly disliked for no clear reason, you have projected. If you have ever fallen intensely in love with someone you barely knew, you have projected. The question is not whether you project, but whether you are willing to own what you project. And that ownership is the doorway to real power. Chapter 1, The Mirror That Lies and the Dopamine Trap. The first thing we must demolish is the seductive belief that external chaos is random. It feels random. A boss who humiliates you, a partner who withdraws affection, friends who betray you. These events seem to arrive from outside, uninvited. But Jung observed something astonishing in his clinical work. Patients with turbulent inner lives consistently generated turbulent outer lives, even when they changed jobs, cities, and relationships. The faces changed, but the script remained identical. Why? Because the psyche does not experience the world directly. It experiences the world through its own structure. If that structure is fragmented, the world appears fragmented. Here is a modern example I want you to sit with. A man leaves a company because his manager is toxic. Within 6 months at a new company, he discovers his new manager is also toxic. He'll tell you it's bad luck. Jung would tell you something else. The man carries an unconscious expectation of authority as hostile. He learned this in childhood. Perhaps his father was harsh, and now every boss is automatically assigned that role before they even speak. He does not see the person in front of him. He sees the shadow figure he has projected onto them. And this is critical. The projection is not passive. It is an active signal that shapes how others respond to him. He braces. He becomes subtly defensive. He misreads neutral cues as threats. And soon enough, the new manager does become frustrated. The mirror doesn't just reflect, it invites the reflection. Consider another example. A woman repeatedly finds herself in friendships where she is the listener, the therapist, the one who gives and gives until she is completely drained. She believes she just attracts needy people. But if we apply Jung's lens, we ask, what part of her needs to be needed? What would happen if she stopped being the caretaker? The terrifying answer is, she would have to face her own emptiness, her own unacknowledged needs that she has projected onto others. By always finding needy friends, she never has to feel her own neediness. The outer chaos is a perfect defense against the inner void, and this is where the brain's reward system betrays you. Every time you identify an external villain, your brain delivers a tiny hit of dopamine. You get to feel righteous, wronged, and temporarily free from the terrifying possibility that the problem lives inside you. Blaming the world feels like clarity, but it's actually an anesthetic. Jung once wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, that the most dangerous person is the one who is convinced they are entirely in the right, because they have projected their shadow completely onto others. In that state, you don't grow. You just find new screens for the same old movie. Consider a third variation: a man who keeps entering business partnerships that end in betrayal. Each time, he discovers his partner has been dishonest, taken more than their share, manipulated the finances. He'll tell himself he's just a poor judge of character. But look closer. He grew up in a household where his father was financially deceitful, and he learned to distrust anyone who handled money. He now unconsciously selects partners who are slightly secretive, and then he hovers and interrogates them, treating them as guilty before any crime. His suspicion becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The partner, feeling constantly accused, starts hiding even small things to avoid conflict, which the man then points to as proof of betrayal. The projection creates the very crime it fears. Ask yourself now, what is the recurring complaint you voice most often? People always take advantage of me. Nobody truly listens. I'm surrounded by controlling personalities. Take that statement and hold it. We will return to it. Because it is not a description of the world, it is a fingerprint of your own shadow. But before we can reclaim that fingerprint, we need to go deeper into the machinery of projection itself. What exactly is being stored in the shadow, and how does it leak out with such precision? Chapter 2, The Storage Unit You Built Without Knowing. Jung's model of the psyche includes the persona, the mask we wear to function in society, and the shadow, which is the repository for everything that doesn't fit that mask. From early childhood, you learned which parts of yourself were acceptable. Maybe anger was punished, so anger went into the shadow. Maybe your natural assertiveness was called bossiness, so it disappeared underground. Maybe your need for deep connection was shamed as clingy, so it was locked away. Over decades, this storage unit becomes packed with living energy traits, desires and impulses that are still active but denied daylight. And it's not only family that decides what goes into the shadow. Culture plays a massive role. If you grew up in a community that prized self-effacement, your ambition was exiled. If your religion taught that doubt was sin, your critical thinking went underground. Even gender expectations carve out different shadow territories. Men are often taught to suppress vulnerability, tenderness, and fear, while women are often taught to suppress rage, direct power, and sexual agency. The shadow is not just personal, it is cultural, familial, and archetypal. This means when you project, you are often projecting not just your own hidden self, but an entire cultural inheritance of disowned qualities. Now here is the mechanism that will sound uncomfortably familiar. The psyche cannot tolerate the pressure of this stored material indefinitely. It must find expression. Since the conscious mind refuses to own these traits, the psyche does something ingenious. It sees them in other people, not metaphorically, literally. The neural circuits that would recognize a trait in yourself get rerouted to hyper-recognize it in others. If you have suppressed your own capacity for cruelty, You will spot cruelty everywhere, often in people who are simply being direct or imperfect. If you have buried your own ambition, you will find yourself surrounded by arrogant people who are just pursuing goals without apology. Let me give you a concrete observation I've seen repeatedly. A person who prides themselves on being endlessly nice will often attract partners who are emotionally unavailable or even dismissive. Why? Because their own shadow contains enormous unexpressed need and even quiet resentment. They project their own disowned needs onto the partner, constantly feeling, "Why can't they just show up for me?" Meanwhile, the partner is playing a role in a drama the nice person unconsciously scripts. Because the nice person's persona must remain the giver and never the asker. The chaos is not an accident. It is a perfectly balanced psychological equation. What makes this pattern so insidious is that it is reinforced by society. We are often praised for being selfless, for being the one who never complains. But underneath that selflessness, a shadow of unexpressed anger and unmet needs grows stronger. The more the persona shines, the darker the shadow becomes. And the darker the shadow, the more explosive the projections. This is why the nicest people can sometimes have the most vicious outbursts. The shadow has been knocking on the door for years, and when it finally breaks through, it does so with terrifying force. There is another layer here that Jung described but few talk about: the golden shadow. This is where we project not our negative traits but our hidden greatness onto others. You might find yourself in awe of a confident speaker, a powerful artist, or a decisive leader, feeling small and incapable in comparison. That awe is often a projection of your own unclaimed potential. You are seeing in them what you refuse to own in yourself, your own capacity to shine. And just like negative projections, these idealizing projections drain you. You give away your power and then feel impoverished, chasing after people to complete you, rather than integrating the gold within. Jung described the shadow as the thing you have no wish to be, but it contains not only negative material, it also holds this gold strengths: creativity, healthy anger that could protect you that you were taught to suppress. When you project your shadow onto colleagues and partners, you are not just seeing them wrongly. You are literally throwing your own power onto them and then feeling drained. There is a specific exhaustion that follows an outburst of blame, a kind of hollow fatigue. That fatigue is the cost of ejecting your own life force and attaching it to someone else's image. So let's pause for a moment. If you have ever felt inexplicably drained after a conflict, even one you think you won, ask yourself, did I just give away a piece of myself? Did I project something that actually belongs to me onto that person? And now I feel empty because a part of me is still attached to them? That emptiness is not a sign of weakness. It is a signal from the psyche, asking you to reclaim what you have disowned. But why do we keep doing it? Because projection is a defense mechanism that protects the ego from a truth it cannot yet bear. The truth is this: I am not only the good, kind, controlled person I pretend to be. I am also selfish, angry, jealous, and hungry for power. Until I can admit that, I will keep meeting those qualities in others and fighting them as if they were external enemies. The battle outside is always a battle inside, displaced. This leads us to the price you are paying for this internal fragmentation, and it is much steeper than you think. Chapter 3: The Silent Invoice of Constant Turbulence. Living with unintegrated shadow material is physically expensive. The body keeps score. When your internal chaos is continuously broadcast onto your environment, your nervous system stays in a state of low-grade threat detection. You scan faces for rejection, listen for criticism in neutral words, brace for the next betrayal. This hypervigilance consumes enormous metabolic resources. It is why, after a day of normal interactions, you can feel completely depleted, not because you did hard work, but because you ran a psychological projection engine for 12 hours. Think about your own life. How many times have you come home from a day that was not physically demanding, yet you collapsed on the couch, unable to do anything but scroll or stare at a screen? That exhaustion is not just mental fatigue, it is the cost of constant projection. Your psyche has been working overtime, managing an inner war while pretending everything is fine on the surface. No organism can sustain that level of internal conflict indefinitely without breaking down. Now, add the physiological dimension. The body doesn't know the difference between a real external threat and a projected one. When you perceive hostility in a colleague because you've projected your own unacknowledged aggression onto them, your body releases cortisol, your heart rate increases, your muscles tighten. You are in fight or flight mode while sitting at a desk. Over months and years, this chronic stress response wears down your immune system, disrupts your sleep, and contributes to anxiety disorders. The shadow, when projected, becomes a silent architect of physical illness. Jung would not have been surprised by what social media algorithms do to this process. Modern digital spaces are projection amplifiers. The algorithm learns your outrage patterns and feeds you an endless stream of targets: a stranger's ignorant comment, a celebrity's misstep, a political figure's statement. You project your shadow onto these faces effortlessly. You get the dopamine of righteous anger, the illusion of clarity, and no real requirement to look inward. The shadow gets daily exercise while the self remains starved. This is why online spaces feel so addictive yet so hollow. They are shadow gyms, not soul gyms. But there is another dimension to this exhaustion. When you project constantly, you lose the ability to see people clearly. You stop relating to individuals and start relating to your own projections. Every relationship becomes a transaction between your persona and your shadow, with the other person merely playing a role you have assigned. Over time, this erodes genuine intimacy. You feel lonely even when surrounded by people, because no one is actually meeting you. They are meeting your projections, and you are meeting theirs. The chaos is not just exhausting, it is profoundly isolating. The most painful invoice arrives when the victim narrative collapses. And it always collapses. Eventually, it might happen in a quiet moment at 3 a.m., or after the third identical relationship ends, or when a friend gently says, "I've noticed a pattern with you." Suddenly, you glimpse a terrifying possibility. The common denominator in every chaotic episode is you. Not the surface you who tries so hard, but the hidden you who keeps arranging the same disaster. That moment is a crisis, but Jung would call it a sacred crisis. It is the beginning of mastery, because you can only fix what you are finally willing to see. But here is the subtle trap many fall into at this point. They acknowledge the pattern. They even say, "I create my own chaos." But then they turn it into a new identity, the self-aware sufferer. They wear their shadow awareness like a badge, while still projecting. True ownership requires a bridge from insight to action. You cannot simply witness the mirror, you must actively clean it. So the question becomes brutally practical. Are you ready to withdraw your projections and stop tending the mirror's lies? If the answer is yes, then the next chapter gives you the precise, practical framework, the alchemy of withdrawal, that Jung's most profound work points toward. Chapter 4, The Alchemy of Withdrawal. From "you did this" to "I am seeing this." Withdrawing a projection is not intellectual. You cannot simply think, "Oh, that's a projection," and have it dissolve. The projection is charged with emotional electricity, and that electricity must be reclaimed through deliberate inner work. Jung taught that the first step is catching the heat, and the heat always shows up as an emotional reaction disproportionate to the event. Here is a diagnostic tool I want you to use this week. When you feel a surge of irritation, resentment, or outrage towards someone, pause and ask, what is the exact trait in them that bothers me? Write it down. Be specific. Not they're annoying, but they interrupt me and act like their time is more valuable. Now, the critical second question. Where have I disowned that same quality in myself? This will feel wrong at first. You will protest, "I never interrupt people. I'm considerate." But stay with it. Maybe you don't interrupt out loud, but do you mentally dismiss others' opinions? Do you silently act like your time is more valuable by refusing to delegate or trust? The shadow often expresses the same energy through a different channel. The outward behavior may differ, but the psychic architecture is identical. Jung called this step the moral effort of introspection. It is uncomfortable because it dissolves the clean separation between victim and villain. When you can say, "The arrogance I perceive in my colleague is a broadcast of my own suppressed self-importance," something shifts instantly. You stop being the effect of their behavior and become the source of your perception. The sentence structure of your inner dialogue flips from "you are doing this to me" to "I am experiencing this through you." That flip is the pivot from powerlessness to agency. Now I want to introduce a second layer to this practice that Jung alluded to but that many modern interpreters overlook: active dialogue with the projection itself. When you catch a projection, don't just label it. Turn inward and ask the projected part directly. Why are you showing up now? What do you need from me? Imagine the trait as a figure standing in front of you. Let it speak. You might hear, "I'm tired of being hidden," or "I want to protect you, but you never let me." This dialogue transforms the projection from an enemy into a messenger. The moment you listen without judgment, the energy begins to return home. The external target loses its charge because the internal source is finally being heard. Let's apply this to a deeper relationship scenario. Suppose you feel chronically unseen by your partner. You accuse them of neglect, of never prioritizing you. The projection withdrawal would ask, in what way have I neglected myself? Where have I abandoned my own needs, not spoken up, not prioritized my own inner life? Almost always, the outer neglect is a perfect mirror of inner self-neglect. The partner's behavior might be objectively lacking, but your intense emotional charge around it reveals that it's hitting an unhealed wound you've been carrying. As you start attending to your own neglected parts, two things happen. The partner's behavior either improves because the dynamic changes, or you gain the clarity to leave because you're no longer using them to act out your own internal drama. Either way, you are free. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if I'm projecting, or if the other person is genuinely harmful? This is a crucial distinction. Jung never said that all external negativity is projection. Real injustice exists. The diagnostic is simple. If you can see the person's flaw without a surge of emotional heat, if you can say this person is manipulative with calm clarity, and take appropriate distance, you are likely seeing clearly. But if the recognition comes with a rush of anger, self-righteousness, or a sense of being personally targeted, projection is almost certainly at play. The heat is the tell. Work with the heat first, then decide on action from a place of equilibrium. This process of withdrawal is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Jung described the shadow as a living thing that requires ongoing dialogue. You must regularly ask, what did I react to today that felt larger than the moment? What does that reaction tell me about the guest I have locked in the basement? The goal is not to eliminate reactions, you are human, but to shorten the gap between projection and recognition. Eventually, you catch the projection in real time. You feel the heat rise, and you immediately turn inward. At that moment, the mirror ceases to rule you. But withdrawal is only half the work. The energy you reclaim must be integrated. If you don't integrate, the projection simply finds a new object. The final chapter addresses the art of integration, how to transform that reclaimed chaos into stability, creativity, and a life that feels genuinely your own. Chapter 5, Mastering the Mirror, Integration, Equilibrium, and Intentional Living. Jung was adamant that the goal is not to destroy the shadow. The shadow is not an enemy. It is a depository of disowned life. To destroy it would be to amputate your own vitality. Integration means welcoming that material back into conscious relationship, not as a master, but as a source of power that you can direct. A person who has integrated their shadow does not become a dark, brooding figure. They become what Jung called a whole person, someone who can access their full range of human response appropriately. Think about what becomes possible when you reclaim traits like healthy aggression, healthy selfishness, and healthy detachment. Aggression, for example, is not violence. It is the energy of assertion, of protecting boundaries, of saying no without crumbling. When you project that aggression onto others, you see bullies everywhere and feel victimized. When you integrate it, you gain a spine. You become someone who can stand firm, and suddenly the bullies seem to evaporate or treat you with respect. The world didn't change. Your inner signal changed, and the mirror reflected back a different reality. Integration also brings a profound shift in how you experience conflict. Before integration, conflict feels like an attack on your identity. After integration, conflict becomes information. You can hear criticism without crumbling because you are no longer projecting your self-worth onto the other person's opinion. You can disagree without demonizing because you are no longer projecting your shadow onto those who hold different views. This is the foundation of genuine psychological maturity, the ability to hold tension without needing to resolve it by blaming someone else. There is a specific Jungian practice that accelerates integration: active imagination. This is not daydreaming. It is a deliberate encounter with the inner figures of your psyche. You sit in a quiet space, close your eyes, and invite the shadow to appear as an image. It might come as a dark version of yourself, a menacing stranger, or even an animal. You then engage it in conversation. You ask questions. Who are you? What do you want from me? Why have you caused these patterns in my life? And you listen to the answers without censorship. The shadow will often speak with surprising wisdom. It might reveal that the chaos it created was the only way it knew to get your attention. As you dialogue regularly, the shadow transforms from a saboteur into an ally. Your dreams will begin to shift. The figures that once chased you may now sit beside you. This internal integration creates a kind of psychological field that Jung would call a state of equilibrium. In physics, equilibrium is the condition where opposing forces are balanced, resulting in stability. Psychologically, it means you are no longer easily pulled into other people's dramas, because you are not projecting your own drama onto them. You develop a repellent quality, not coldness, but a quiet solidity. Toxic people and chaotic situations often lose interest because they require a hook, and you have removed your hooks. You stop attracting chaos not because you are lucky, but because your internal fragmentation is no longer broadcasting distress signals into the environment. This equilibrium also ushers in something Jung termed synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. When your inner world is integrated, the outer world begins to organize itself around your wholeness rather than your fragmentation. You meet the right people at the right time. Opportunities appear that align with your authentic self. This is not magic. It is the natural result of no longer projecting your chaos onto the world. The mirror is clean, so the reflection is clear. This is the final vision Jung offers. The world ceases to be a battlefield of projections and becomes a canvas for intentional living. When you stop trying to fix everyone else's reflection and start polishing your own face, you enter a creative relationship with reality. You see people more clearly. You respond rather than react. You feel the full range of emotion without being possessed by it. You recognize conflict as information, not as identity. Life still holds difficulty, but difficulty no longer holds you captive. I want to leave you with a practice Jung himself used, and taught his patients a nightly review of the day's projections. Before sleep, replay 3 moments where you felt a strong negative charge toward someone. For each, ask 3 questions. What exactly did I dislike in them? Where have I expressed or suppressed that same quality in my life? And what is one small action I can take tomorrow to own that energy consciously? Then, and this is critical, spend a few moments in active imagination with whatever shadow figure emerges. Ask it what it needs. Thank it for revealing itself. This nightly ritual will, over weeks, fundamentally restructure your relationship with your own depth. You will begin to feel lighter, less reactive, more rooted in yourself. If this journey has resonated with you, know that the moment you chose to sit through these ideas, something in you already shifted. The mirror is no longer your master. You have begun to pick it up and turn it toward yourself. That takes immense courage. Carl Jung often said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself fully. But on the other side of that terror is a stability no external storm can shake. Go and do the work. The chaos will step back not because it vanished, but because you stopped inviting it in. Thank you for watching. If this video brought you clarity, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it.